Noble never believed love could find her in a foreign land. She was a young black woman, now studying in Seoul on scholarship. Her quiet charm and deep laughter had a way of drawing people in, including Hyun, the icy billionaire CEO of Skyline Technologies, whose empire touched every part of Korea's skyline. Their worlds collided one rainy afternoon. She had spilled coffee on him outside a cafe, not realizing who he was. Instead of fury, he smiled slightly, something rare for a man known for his coldness, and offered to buy her a new cup. That simple gesture started something neither of them saw coming. In the months that followed, Hyun grew attached to her warmth. Noble, in turn, fell hard for the man behind the headlines. The Hyun who smiled softly when she made him tea, who watched her sleep like she was something fragile. He took her to private beaches in Busan, whispered, "You're my calm," when stress consumed him, and kissed her under city lights that reflected in her eyes like stars. But love built on secrets never stays pure for long. One evening, Noble arrived at his penthouse with a surprise dinner, only to overhear him on the phone. His words cut like knives. "She's just a distraction. I'll end it soon." She froze, her heart twisting. When Hyun saw her standing there, his face fell. He tried to explain that he'd said it for business reasons to keep their relationship hidden from investors, but the damage was done. The girl who gave him her heart walked away in tears. Days turned into weeks. Noble's laughter disappeared. Her light dimmed. But someone else noticed: Juan, Hyun's twin brother. The quieter one. The artist. The man who had always lingered in the shadows when Hyun brought Noble to family dinners. Who smiled at her stories but never dared to speak too much. Juan found her sitting by the Han River one cold evening, lost in her thoughts. "You shouldn't cry over someone who can't see your worth," he said gently. "You sound just like him," she murmured without turning. "I'm not him," Juan replied. "I never could be. But I wish I was. Just to have had your heart once." Those words, they wrapped around her like a blanket she didn't know she needed. From that day, Juan became her quiet companion. He painted her smile, cooked her meals when she forgot to eat, and listened, really listened, when she talked about her pain. His kindness wasn't loud, but it was steady. He didn't rush her. He didn't push her to forget Hyun. He simply stayed, until she realized that peace could exist in another heart. One night, as snow fell softly outside his art studio, Juan showed her a new painting. Her face, bathed in gold light, her eyes full of hope. "That's how I see you," he whispered. "Not broken, just waiting to be loved right." Noble felt her chest tighten. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time, they weren't from pain. "Juan, I never thought I'd feel this again." "Then don't think," he murmured, taking her hand. "Just feel." Their lips met, gentle at first, then deep with all the emotion they'd both held back for too long. The warmth between them melted every shard of heartbreak Hyun had left behind. For the first time in months, Noble didn't feel lost. She felt found. And somewhere in the distance, Hyun watched from his car, realizing too late that he had lost the only woman who ever made him human, to the one person who knew how to love her without condition. Noble's heart began to thaw. Life with Juan was like a soft song. No grand gestures, no drama, just quiet moments that felt eternal. He painted her laughter into canvases, took her to hidden gardens behind art museums, and held her hand as if it was something precious, fragile, and endlessly deserving. Yet, even in her peace, the ghost of Hyun lingered. Sometimes, when Juan's face caught the same light, or when his laughter echoed just like his brother's, her heart ached. She remembered the man who once made her feel like the only woman in the world, until he shattered that illusion. Juan knew. He never pretended not to. One evening, as they watched the sun set from his studio balcony, he said softly, "I know you still think of him sometimes." Noble looked away, ashamed. "I try not to, but it's hard when your faces are so alike." Juan smiled faintly, a sadness flickering in his eyes. "Our faces might be the same, but our hearts aren't. He was your storm, Noble. I want to be calm." Those words sank deep. She turned toward him, brushing her fingers against his cheek. "You already are." But fate has a cruel sense of timing. Hyun returned. It was at an art exhibition, Juan's latest showcase, filled with paintings of a woman the public now whispered about as his muse. The room buzzed with admiration, cameras flashing, critics swooning. And then the doors opened. Hyun walked in, sharp in his charcoal suit, his gaze cold until it landed on Noble. The air shifted. He approached slowly, each step echoing in the gallery's silence. "You look different," he murmured. "Happier." "I am," she replied, her voice steady. Juan stepped forward, protective, placing a gentle hand on her back. Hyun's jaw tightened. "So it's true. You and my brother." "You had your chance, Hyun," Juan said evenly. "You broke her heart. I'm not going to let you break it again." For a long moment no one spoke. The tension between the twins was heavy, one fueled by guilt, the other by love. Finally, Hyun turned to Noble. "I was wrong," he admitted. "I said things I didn't mean, because I was scared. You were too real for me, too good, and I ruined it." Noble's eyes softened, but she didn't move closer. "You taught me how painful love can be," she whispered. "But Juan, he taught me how healing it can become." Hyun looked at her, truly looked, and saw that the light that once belonged to him now glowed for someone else. He swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Then at least you found peace, even if it wasn't with me." He turned and left, the weight of regret following him out into the night. That evening, after the crowd had gone and the lights dimmed, Noble stood before Juan's painting. Her portrait, the one that had captivated everyone. Juan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Do you ever regret any of it?" he asked quietly. She leaned back against him. "No," she whispered, "because everything that broke me led me here. To you." He smiled against her neck, his breath warm. "Then let me be the man who paints the rest of your story." She turned, her lips meeting his in a slow, tender kiss. A kiss that carried both promise and peace. And for the first time, Noble knew that her heart was exactly where it was meant to be. Noble and Juan's love grew in the small things. Shared breakfasts of pancakes and strawberries, stolen kisses in his paint-splattered studio, long nights where she read beside him while he sketched. Juan was gentle, the kind of man who didn't need to speak love, because he showed it. When she fell asleep on the couch, he covered her with a blanket. When she was stressed, he played the piano softly until she smiled. Yet, a shadow loomed Hyun's return. He wasn't the same. The arrogant CEO had become quieter, softer. A man stripped of pride. Rumors began to swirl in Seoul's business circles. That Hyun had stepped back from Skyline Technologies. That he had been seen at Juan's exhibitions, standing in the back, watching silently. At first, Noble tried to ignore it. But one afternoon, as she left Juan's gallery, she found Hyun, waiting by the riverbank where she used to sit and cry months ago. He looked human again. No tailored armor, no cold smirk, just Hyun. "I didn't come to steal you back," he said quietly, hands in his pockets. "Then why are you here?" she asked. "To say sorry the way I should have before. I thought love made me weak, but it made me blind. And losing you made me see." Noble's throat tightened. She'd imagined this moment 100 times. Hyun apologizing, admitting he was wrong. But now, all she felt was a deep, bittersweet ache. "I loved you, Hyun," she said softly. "But you taught me love shouldn't hurt." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Then I hope he never lets you feel that kind of pain again." He turned to leave but paused. "Take care of her," he said quietly as Juan appeared behind her, his hand instinctively finding hers. "I will," Juan replied. Hyun smiled faintly, one last time, and walked away. Into the crowd, into memory. That night, Juan found Noble in his studio, sitting by the window with tears streaming silently down her face. "You miss him," he said, not accusingly, just understanding. She turned to him, shaking her head. "No, I just remember who I was when I loved him. I was afraid, uncertain. But with you, I'm home." He walked over, kneeling before her, his fingers brushing away her tears. "Then promise me something," he whispered. "Don't let the past steal the beauty of what we have now." She smiled through her tears. "I promise." He kissed her. Slow, deep, full of every emotion that words could never hold. And when they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "You're everything love was meant to be." Outside, the city lights shimmered across the Han River, the same place where heartbreak had once begun, now glowing with the warmth of a love that healed, forgave, and endured. The world began to see what Juan had always known, that Noble was his muse, his calm, his light. Her laughter filled his home. Her energy gave life to his art. Each new painting he unveiled told their story, a journey from heartbreak to healing, from shadows to sunrise. The art world called it the golden phase, but to Juan, it was simply love on canvas. They spent mornings walking hand in hand through Seoul's quiet streets, disguised under caps and scarves. Afternoons were for laughter, Noble experimenting in the kitchen, while Juan pretended to be her taste tester, exaggerating every bite just to make her giggle. But as his fame grew, so did the world's curiosity. The tabloids began to whisper, "Who is the black woman behind Korea's new art sensation? Are Juan and his muse more than just inspiration?" Cameras followed them. Flashbulbs became part of their daily life. And while Juan ignored the noise, Noble felt its sting. She had always loved quietly, privately, and now the world wanted to turn her love into a spectacle. One night, she sat alone in the balcony garden, looking out at the stars, anxiety coiling around her chest. When Juan joined her, she didn't hide her worries. "They talk like I don't belong here," she whispered. "You belong wherever I am," he said softly, sitting beside her. "But what if your world gets tired of me? Then I'll leave that world behind," he replied without hesitation. She turned to him, startled. "You'd give up everything?" He took her hand, pressing it to his heart. "Everything means nothing without you." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that she was finally loved without fear. The next morning, Juan made a bold choice. At a press event for his new collection, surrounded by cameras and critics, he introduced Noble not as his muse, but as his love. "This woman," he said, eyes fixed on her through the flashing lights, "taught me that beauty isn't in colors or forms. It's in the heart that loves without asking to be seen." The crowd gasped, reporters buzzed, but Noble just stood there, frozen, emotional, until Juan walked to her, took her hand, and kissed it softly. The world saw it. The story of the quiet artist and the woman who brought him light spread across media, across borders. Some admired, others whispered, but none could deny the power in their connection. That evening, when they were finally alone, Noble touched his face and whispered, "You didn't have to do that." He smiled, brushing her lips with his thumb. "I wanted to. I was tired of hiding the best part of me." She kissed him then, slow, lingering, full of pride and love and gratitude. And when he held her close, his voice was barely a whisper against her hair. "Let the world talk, my love. We'll just keep writing our own story." Their love grew stronger, steadier, rooted not in secrecy or fantasy, but in truth. And though the world now watched them, nothing could shake the bond they had built in quiet moments, between paint and laughter, between forgiveness and forever. The seasons shifted again, painting Seoul in the soft gold of early autumn. The air smelled of fallen leaves and quiet beginnings, a perfect reflection of the peace Noble and Juan had found in each other. They had learned to live gently despite the noise around them. She accompanied him to art shows across Europe and Africa, where people admired his work, unaware that every brushstroke was, in truth, a love letter to her. But lately, Noble noticed something different about Juan. He seemed distracted, always disappearing into his studio late at night, smiling to himself, sketching things he wouldn't let her see. When she teased him about it, he'd only grin and say, "It's a surprise, my love. You'll know soon." One Friday evening, Juan asked her to dress warmly. "We're going somewhere special," he said, his voice soft but tinged with excitement. They drove for hours, leaving behind the glitter of Seoul until the city lights gave way to the calm of the countryside. Eventually, they stopped by a quiet hillside overlooking the ocean, a place Noble had never seen before. Lanterns glowed all around the hill, forming a pathway of golden light leading to a white canopy surrounded by candles and flower petals. Her breath caught. "Juan, what is this?" He smiled, offering his hand. "Our story." As they walked under the canopy, she realized the lanterns weren't random. Each one had a small painting hanging beneath it. Paintings of them. Their first meeting by the Han River. Their first kiss under falling snow. Her laughter in his kitchen. Her tears his comfort. Their love, painted in every shade of devotion. When she reached the last lantern, she found a small canvas. On it, he had painted a woman standing beneath a sky of gold, holding a heart in her hands, and before it, a man kneeling with a ring. She turned to him, tears already blurring her vision. Juan was kneeling, just like in the painting, his eyes shimmering with emotion. "Noble," he began, voice trembling slightly. "You walked into my life when it was gray and quiet. You gave it color, warmth, and meaning. You taught me how love feels when it's real." He opened a small velvet box, revealing a ring that sparkled softly under the lantern light. "I don't want my world to be beautiful only when you're in it. I want it to stay beautiful because you are. Will you be the heart behind every painting I ever create? Will you be my forever?" Noble's hand flew to her mouth, her tears falling freely. She knelt beside him, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Juan. 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling. Then he pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of joy, tears, and forever. As they held each other under the sea of lanterns, the waves crashed gently below, as if the ocean itself was clapping for them. And far away, on a lonely city rooftop, Hyun looked up at the same sky, a faint smile crossing his face. "She finally got her happy ending," he murmured to himself. "And so did my brother." That night, under a canvas of stars, Noble and Juan made their silent promise. Not just to love each other, but to grow together, to turn their scars into art, and their love into a masterpiece. Autumn ripened into winter, and Seoul once again wore its blanket of snow. Yet this time, for Noble and Juan, it wasn't a season of cold. It was the warmest winter of their lives. Their engagement had quietly become a symbol of love that defied culture, distance, and expectation. The tabloids had raged, fans had swooned, and critics had speculated. But Noble and Juan didn't let the noise touch their world. They built their own rhythm. Their mornings began with shared coffee in a sunlit kitchen, Juan sketching while Noble read, her legs resting across his lap. Their evenings were filled with music and soft laughter, the kind that comes from souls finally at peace. Sometimes, Juan would paint late into the night, and Noble would fall asleep beside him on the couch. When he finished, he'd quietly drape a blanket over her and whisper, "You're my favorite masterpiece." Their love wasn't just grand, it was gentle. They found beauty in ordinary things, cooking ramen together and burning it because they couldn't stop laughing, painting her hands and pressing them onto a blank wall to leave their mark, dancing barefoot in the living room to old Korean love songs she couldn't quite pronounce. And through it all, they never stopped choosing each other, every day, in every small way. One snowy evening, they sat by the fireplace, Juan sketching lazily while Noble leaned against him, tracing circles on his hand. "Do you ever miss your old life?" she asked softly. He smiled faintly. "You mean the one before you?" She nodded. "No," he said after a moment, "because I wasn't really living before you. I was just waiting." Noble looked up, her eyes glistening. "You always know what to say. That's because you inspire everything I say," he teased. She giggled, pushing him playfully, then leaned in to kiss him. Slow, sweet, and sure. The ring on her finger glinted in the firelight, catching Juan's eye. He took her hand, brushing his lips against it. "Next spring," he whispered, "we'll make it forever." Her heart fluttered. You mean? Yes, he smiled. Our wedding. Somewhere by the ocean. Where it all began. Tears welled in her eyes as she threw her arms around him. I can't wait to start forever with you. He held her close, his voice barely above a whisper. You already have my love. Outside, snowflakes fell softly against the windows, melting as they touched the warm glass, just like the way love had melted every wall between them. And as the night deepened, Noble rested her head on Juan's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. The same heart that had waited quietly in the shadows until she was ready to love again. Their story had begun in pain, grown in healing, and now bloomed in peace. Two souls, one promise, and a love strong enough to turn heartbreak into art, and loneliness into home. Spring arrived in Seoul with the scent of blooming cherry blossoms and the soft hum of new beginnings. For Noble and Juan, every day together felt like another brushstroke on the canvas of a love they had painted patiently, with laughter, tenderness, and unshakable trust. Their mornings began slowly, unhurried. The sunlight spilled through the wide windows of their art-filled apartment, painting their skin gold. Juan always woke first, brushing soft kisses across her forehead before slipping into the kitchen to make coffee. 2 cups, one slightly sweeter because he knew she could never handle the bitterness. When Noble joined him, barefoot and smiling, he would grin and say, "Perfect timing. Your cup was getting lonely." She'd laugh, that musical, heartwarming laugh he swore was better than any melody, and lean into him as they shared quiet sips by the window. Their love wasn't loud, but it filled every corner of their world. They spent afternoons in the garden of their home, where Noble planted African lilies beside the Korean roses Juan grew for her. It became their little paradise, a blend of 2 worlds that shouldn't have fit, yet did perfectly. Some days, Juan painted while Noble read beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. On others, she danced playfully around the studio, teasing him until he abandoned his canvas just to catch her and spin her into his arms. "You're worse than a muse," he'd whisper, breathless. "Then stop painting me," she'd laugh. "Never," he'd murmur, kissing her nose. "You're my favorite art." One rainy afternoon, they built a fort out of blankets in the living room. A childish whim that turned into something intimate and beautiful. They watched movies on a laptop, shared popcorn, and whispered dreams about the future. "Do you think love always feels like this?" Noble asked quietly, tracing patterns on his chest. "No," Juan replied. "I think it only feels like this when it's real." She smiled, heart full, and pressed her lips to his, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that said thank you for finding me. Their nights were peaceful, filled with the gentle rhythm of 2 souls who had found home in each other. Sometimes they fell asleep talking about where they'd travel next. Maybe Nigeria to meet her family, maybe Jeju to paint by the sea. Other nights, they simply held each other, the world outside fading into silence. And when Juan couldn't sleep, he'd whisper softly against her ear, "Do you know what I love most about us?" "What?" she'd murmur sleepily. "That we never needed perfection, just each other." She'd smile drowsily, curling closer. "That's all we'll ever need." Every moment between them, the laughter, the quiet, the playful teasing, became its own kind of forever. Their love wasn't about grand gestures anymore. It was about peace, about warmth, about finding joy in the ordinary and turning it into something sacred. Because in a world full of noise and change, Noble and Juan had built something that never faded. A love steady enough to weather storms, tender enough to heal wounds, and deep enough to last beyond time itself. When spring turned to early summer, Juan surprised Noble with a small note tucked into her morning coffee mug. It read simply, "Pack light. We're going where the sea knows our names." She laughed, curious, and by afternoon they were on a flight to Jeju Island, Korea's island of romance and renewal. The moment they arrived, the world seemed to pause. The air soft with salt and flowers, the ocean whispering secrets only lovers could understand. Their villa sat on a quiet cliffside, surrounded by wildflowers and overlooking a stretch of endless blue. The first morning there, Noble woke to the sound of waves and Juan humming as he painted by the open window. His canvas already held shades of gold and turquoise, the colors of Jeju's dawn. She walked up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "You never stop painting, do you?" He chuckled softly. "Not when my inspiration is standing this close." She smiled against his back. "If you keep saying things like that, I might never leave your side." "Then don't," he whispered, turning to face her. "Stay right here always." He kissed her then, gently at first, then deeper, until the brush fell from his hand and the world outside faded into nothing but the warmth of their closeness. Their days on Jeju were filled with sunlight and laughter. They rode bicycles through tangerine fields, Noble laughing as the wind tangled her hair. Juan trailed behind, pretending to race but really just admiring her joy. At night, they walked barefoot along the beach, the tide washing over their feet as the stars mirrored themselves on the water. One evening, they built a small bonfire by the shore. Juan roasted marshmallows, badly, while Noble tried to teach him an African song from her childhood. Their laughter echoed into the sea breeze, wild and carefree. "You sound terrible," she teased. "You mean talented," he corrected, grinning. "No, terrible," she insisted, giggling. "Then you'll just have to keep singing with me to make it sound better." And she did. Their voices blended under the night sky, hers sweet and lilting, his soft and low, until it felt like the stars themselves had stopped to listen. Later that night, lying beneath a blanket on the sand, Noble looked up at the glittering heavens. "Do you ever think about how strange it is that we found each other?" she whispered. "Strange?" he smiled. "I think it's destiny to wear a disguise." She turned to him, eyes shimmering. "Destiny?" "Yes," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because I can't think of a single world where I wouldn't have found you." The sea sang softly in the background as he kissed her again. A slow, lingering kiss that tasted of salt, warmth, and forever. Jeju became their secret world, a place of renewal, laughter, and love that deepened beyond words. And when they finally returned to Seoul, it wasn't just with memories. It was with a bond even stronger, rooted in peace, painted in joy, because on that island of wind and waves, Noble and Juan hadn't just escaped the world. They had found the rhythm of their hearts, beating together, steady and true. When Noble and Juan returned from Jeju, Seoul felt different, softer, slower, more alive. The city that once echoed with noise and pressure now seemed to hum with quiet purpose. Their love had grown deeper there on the island, and when they came back, they carried more than just memories. They carried a shared vision. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the arts district, Juan stopped in front of an old, empty building covered in ivy. Its windows were dusty, its walls faded, but Noble saw something in his eyes. "You're thinking of painting it, aren't you?" she teased. "No," he said, smiling. "I'm thinking of filling it." "Filling it with what?" "With us," he replied simply. "With art, with stories, with everything we've lived and everything we'll create. A place for love and culture, for people like us who see beauty in differences." Noble blinked, surprised. "You mean a gallery?" "More than that," he said, excitement soft in his voice. "A home for art, music, and love, where people from every place can share who they are." She stared at him for a long moment, her heart swelling with admiration. "Then let's build it together," she whispered. And so they did. Over the next few months, their lives became a whirlwind of creativity and passion. Noble designed the spaces, her ideas inspired by both African warmth and Korean elegance, while Juan curated the art, blending modern expression with soul. They named it the Harmony House. When it finally opened, people from all over came, artists, musicians, lovers, drawn by the energy of two hearts that had turned pain into beauty. Noble stood at the entrance on opening night, wearing a flowing white dress that made her look like one of Juan's living paintings. He joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Do you see what we made?" he asked softly. "We made more than a gallery," she said. We made love visible. He smiled, kissing her temple. And this is only the beginning. Life flowed beautifully after that. They spent their days welcoming visitors, guiding young artists, and creating side by side. Sometimes Noble would host storytelling evenings, sharing tales from her African roots. Episode 1 ends here. The next episode comes up soon. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment. Also like, share, and subscribe to my channel and click on the notification icon so that you will get notified whenever a new story is uploaded.